Fantastic Four First Steps breakdown. Let's check it out. This was fire movie, bro.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Marvel Fantastic Four First Steps breakdown and
Fantastic
Easter eggs for the entire movie.
Four.
There were a billion. It was packed wall to wall with classic Jack Kirby, Stanley. They even had literal Easter eggs for them in the actual movie as if they're canonical inside their alternate universe. There are a couple guys
I didn't even
working at
catch
the
that.
early version of Marvel Comics, Timely Comics, actually making a Coming of Galactus story based on the events that happen in this movie. Wouldn't that actually happen inside a universe where you actually have superheroes, where comics would actually be a result of real life
What's
superheroes
up?
instead of the other way around? There was a ton of Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run baked into this, and the much more obvious connections and references to Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, like the actual post credit scene. So if you're brand new to the channel,
I'm
be sure to
good. What
subscribe to
about
get
you?
everything. There'll be a bunch of videos coming this weekend too about more specific stuff. This is one of those no sleep situations, marathon, just trying to put all these Easter eggs together. Miraculously, I didn't die, but I am still
Yeah,
super
I was
sick.
about to say
Hopefully,
you
that will
sound
change
sick.
by the weekend. Probably one of the biggest questions I've seen on my videos the last couple days since the movie has come out was what happened to Galactus's ship at the end of the movie, because
I
only
think
he
Doom
got
took it,
portaled to the other side of the universe with Silver
honestly.
Surfer. His ship is
Or he's
still in
gonna
Earth's
take it.
orbit. So, really quick reminder, careful for spoilers for the movie if you haven't watched it yet, because we'll be talking about everything that
That
happens.
way he could go
The movie
anywhere.
is named Fantastic Four First Steps as a reference to Franklin Richards' first baby steps as he's born during the movie and grows up to age 4 by the events of the post credit scene. You could also think of it as a reference to Galactus's first steps on planet Earth because Galactus and Franklin Richards' characters are so intertwined during the events of the movie because as Galactus says, Franklin is destined to become the next Galactus someday, the next Hungerer.
I wonder if he
That's actually a
will.
more specific reference to
I
Jonathan
don't think
Hickman's
they'll make him.
Fantastic Four run in Mark Waid's History of the Marvel Universe, where he literally shows Franklin merging with Galactus just before the death of the universe. He is destined to inherit his cursed throne. Franklin Richards is probably one of the most powerful characters Marvel ever introduced in the comics. For a long time, he was a mutant. We will see if Marvel keeps him being a mutant in the MCU future movies. They could change that. In the movie, Galactus says he was born with the power cosmic. We literally see him use it to bring Sue Storm back to life at the
That
end of the
was
movie.
fire, bro.
This is actually a change from his
I knew
comic
he
book
was gonna do
backstory.
it.
The reason why he's so powerful in the comics is Sue Storm is pregnant with him as a fetus, and he siphons off a portion of the power from the cosmic control rod, which Reed Richards has stolen from Annihilus in the Negative Zone. That device allows the user to control all of reality in any given universe, and that's how they explain Franklin Richards' ability to create entire universes. It's kind of like Scarlet Witch in the way that she has godlike powers over reality inside the Hex. Franklin Richards is a little bit like that, but just in the normal universe. During the movie, Galactus also tells the Fantastic Four that
Anywhere,
he is hiding
basically, I
his
think.
true nature from you, which is why Reed Richards can't detect anything weird with Franklin, just because Franklin himself is suppressing his powers. They're literally pulling a Grogu with Franklin Richards. It's the same basic idea. Grogu in the Star Wars universe in the Mandalorian show hid his powers, hid himself from the Force so that the Emperor wouldn't detect him. Kevin Feige has not said anything about how powerful they're going to let Franklin be in the MCU or if they're going to depower him. They tend to depower characters a lot. Usually, when people ask how the power scaling
He gonna
goes in
be
the
too
MCU,
OP,
generally
probably.
it's way lower than in the comics. The movie only canonizes him as being as powerful, if not a little bit more powerful than Galactus, which is extremely powerful, like a juiced up version of Galactus. We'll get into that too, because when Reed Richards says they're going to strand Galactus on the other side of the universe without his ship, it'll also keep Galactus from feeding as often as he needs to, which also weakens him greatly. Comics, the source of Galactus's power is the power cosmic. It's a totally different type of source than we've seen in the MCU so far, because the Silver Surfer has not been canon to the MCU yet or Galactus yet. The power cosmic was created when Galactus himself was created in the combination of the scientist Galen of Taw before the death of his universe with the living entity, the living embodiment of that version of the
Why
multiverse.
even make it?
There are a couple points in the movie
That's
where
crazy.
Galactus lets out little details about his origin story. Really good example of that is when Reed Richards is examining samples from his spaceship, his world ship, Taw 2, and they predate their universe. When Galactus was still Galen of Top, before the death of his universe, he made a bargain with the living entity, the cosmos of that multiverse, because they both wanted to survive into the next version of the universe through the next Big Bang. They wound up merging, and that created the entity that is Galactus. Also, the reason why he became the Hunger and he has the power cosmic, because it's basically like the power of an entire multiverse or the remnant of a multiverse rolled into one. One of the other interesting connections, too, is that the Infinity Stones also predate the MCU universe. For example, Galactus, when he's using his power, you actually see his eyes glow purple, kind of like the Power Stone, and he made the same sound that the
That's what I
Infinity
thought
Gauntlet
too.
made when Thanos was using the Infinity Stones. So it's like saying that
Oh,
Galactus wields the same type of power as the Infinity Stones, meaning that Franklin Richards also wields that same type of power. The actual movie begins with a 1960s version of the Marvel Studios logo in blues because Fantastic Four blue and it's a 1960s period piece. Easter eggs released earlier before the movie came out led me to believe that it's specifically just after John F. Kennedy's
I
assassination.
really thought they were gonna go
Instead of
to
the
the
traditional
main
Marvel
universe.
fanfare, they play a Fantastic Four theme.
I didn't
Michael
think they would
Giacchino
be
did all the
Galactus.
music. If you look at his track list, they have funny references and jokes. He does this for all of his soundtracks on all the different movies that he does. He's mostly known as a composer, but he also directed the Werewolf by Night special presentation. The opening scene tells the story of Sue Storm and Reed Richards learning that she's pregnant with Franklin. They also reveal this is taking place in the 828 universe, which was picked as a reference to Jack Kirby's birthday in real life, August 28th.
You,
The whole movie is like a love letter to his art style in the classic Fantastic Four comics. Like I said, they literally have characters in the movie that are meant to be this universe's version of Stan Lee, Stanley Lieber, and Jack
that was
Kirby
fire.
working at a version of Timely Comics doing art that looks just like Jack Kirby's art. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually used genuine, real life Jack Kirby art that he actually drew himself for that scene. Pull it out of the archives, we'll put it in the movie. The actual story of the movie is an adaptation of The Coming of Galactus, a three-part story where he comes to consume the Earth.
Okay.
During that scene with the comic book creators at Timely Comics, they actually have an Easter egg for that panel with the Watcher Uatu. Part 3 is Part 3 of The Coming of Galactus. Just because they don't want to get too crazy with it, you don't actually see Galactus in any of those panels. That would be like a little too much. Like, wait a minute, how would they know what Galactus looks like before he actually shows up on planet Earth? You have to remember that the comics that they're creating in Timely Comics in this universe are based on the adventures that the Fantastic Four have already had. Matt Shackman is the director of the movie. You probably remember him from WandaVision. He's done a bunch of other stuff. Also
Oh,
said
that's
that he
why it was
wanted the
so
movie
good
to
then.
be set in an alternate universe so that they wouldn't have to explain why the Fantastic Four didn't help during the final battle in Avengers
Yeah.
Endgame. Just solves a whole lot of continuity issues for them, and they can bring them to the MCU in that Thunderbolts post-credit scene.
Extra dimensional ship entering
Yeah,
atmosphere.
I thought it was maybe
Extra
Doom,
dimensional, what does
but
that mean?
Don't worry, we will
probably gonna
unpack
be
that in a
them.
second too. Like, who is on that Fantastic Four ship? What does that have to do with the Fantastic Four post-credit scene with Doctor Doom and Franklin Richards? Inside their universe, there's no Avengers, like there's no Spider-Man, there's no Captain America. They're the only superhero team, and all the villains are ones from their classic comics. So it's literally like a self-contained Fantastic Four
Puppet
universe
Master,
just for those
Blowman,
comics. You
Diablo.
notice the Baxter building is right next to their spaceship launch
some
pad.
more
It's
of
called
them,
the
too.
Excelsior, which is a Stan Lee reference. That's his trademark catchphrase. He started using that during letters columns in the late 1960s. Excelsior is also the New York State motto. In universe, they all started out as regular astronauts working for this Earth's version of NASA. Reed Richards was already married to Sue Storm. Ben Grimm had been his lifelong friend since they were kids, explaining how they were all a team long before they got powers, like they were celebrity astronauts even before they got powers. Pedro Pascal plays his Reed Richards in the movie like a little colder intellectual bend on Reed Richards, like a human calculator that is also sometimes capable of emotion, a little more like he is during Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run, like an everything dies kind of Reed Richards. There are a couple references to this later in the movie where he's like, it's my job to think about the unthinkable, terrible things so that we can prevent them. The actual plot of the movie picks up at the 4th anniversary to the day that they got their powers. That's why they go on the Ted Gilbert show to celebrate. Like, hey, it's been 4 years of the Fantastic Four. There are many,
They're
many
most
four puns
popular
in the
people
movie.
there.
The whole reason why Reed Richards is looking for iodine in this scene here is because they've just been on an adventure and he has bruises on his skin. His abilities don't make him immune to physical damage. Galactus finds this out later the fun way as he starts to pull him like Taffy
that was
in the
crazy,
movie.
I ain't gonna lie.
The whole reason why Sue Storm
They're
says
just playing
12
around with him.
seconds, very specific number, is because that's how long it's going to take the pregnancy test to finish calculating. They learn about the coming of Franklin, which is also meant to dovetail with the coming of Galactus, reference to that comic book storyline. They meet Galactus just as Franklin Richards is born. That's how connected they are. Also, Galactus kind of induces labor into Sue Storm. Like, you know what? Why don't we make him born right now?
Yeah, that was
Reed
insane.
mentions that they tried and failed to get pregnant for about 2 years, a little while after they got
He
their
wanted the
powers, and
baby
didn't think that
now.
it was going to be possible. Like, he thought that the changes to their DNA made having children impossible, which they found out is not true. If it wasn't clear, Matt Shackman said that they were supposed to feel like older parents in the movie, like thus, Reed Richards' gray-looking hairs. He also wanted it to be a reference to Matt Shackman's real-life daughter who wasn't born until he was over 40 years old. Like, he was an older parent himself. His daughter also has a cameo later in the movie that I'll point out when we get there.
Ding.
Then it launches into that big montage of figuring out how to handle Franklin Richards because he already expects him to be born with powers because of their altered DNA. Then they do the Ted Gilbert show. The ABC logo here is meant to be based on the real-life
Okay.
1960s ABC broadcast. Ted Gilbert is played by Mark Gatiss, and he's based on Ed Sullivan in real life, like the Ed Sullivan Show. This whole setup with the arrows pointing at them on his show is actually a reference to the Beatles in real life going on the Ed Sullivan Show. They use the montage and the voiceover to do a quick tutorial on their backstory in the universe, what's happened the past 4 years. It's mostly for casual audiences who haven't read the comics. It reads mostly like their comic book backstory. Astronauts bombarded with cosmic rays that gave them powers, and then they face a lot of the villains that they face in their first couple of comics. There are a couple of changes
They
to
have
this
their
during the
city
Chris
on
Evans
lock-
Fantastic Four
lockdown.
movie, like making Doctor Doom part of their crew.
They have
He was not
frozen
in the
everything.
comics. He got his powers a completely different way. And it should be mentioned, Julian McMahon, who played that original Doctor Doom, just passed away. May he rest in peace.
R.I.P.
During the montage of them facing their classic villains here, notice that they're wearing earlier versions of their suits. This is also meant to dovetail with the original
I
Fantastic
thought
Four
we were gonna
comics.
get the
Stan
actual
Lee and
fight,
Jack
but it
Kirby
was
gave
just
them
like
newer, upgraded suits a little bit later
just showing
after
the
the comics
fights
had
they already
started.
had.
You also notice all
Which
the
is pretty cool,
advertisements
though.
for the products around Times Square in their version of New York City are based on real-life 1960s products. Some are still around today, though, but these are all meant to look like the 1960s versions. Squirt Soda, Yoo-Hoo, Canada Dry, 7-Up Soda. The movie marquee Sub-Zero Intel feels like an Ice Station Zebra reference, which is a real-life movie from the 1960s. You also notice the retro-futurism. The whole idea is that Reed Richards has used his advancements in science, Howard Stark and Tony Stark style, to basically benefit all of humanity, but he also owns the patent on a lot of this stuff, so it's basically where they get all their money from, is from his patents. A little while after this, you actually hear Mole Man screaming
take
about how
care of
Reed
the whole
Richards
city.
only cares about money. Their repulsor technology looks similar to Stark Tech arc reactor technology repulsors, but it's not the exact same. They fight Giganto in a scene that's meant to be a reference to the cover of Fantastic Four #1 in the comics. That's the issue where Mole Man was controlling Giganto. Them wearing the older looking blue suits also a reference to the original suits they wore in the comics. I think they also wanted this to feel like their first actual fight as a team with their powers. They show the cartoon show that networks started making in their universe based on their adventures. I wonder if the Fantastic Four actually got any profits from the show. Maybe a
They
little
had
bit.
to, bro.
It's also based on the real-life 1967 Fantastic Four cartoon. You actually see Ben Grimm say it's clobberin' time during the cartoon, setting up the running gag in the movie where he eventually does say it by the time they're fighting Galactus in the third act.
He had a whole
There's a ton
beard,
more
bro.
Easter
That
eggs
was
on the
funny.
billboards for products, like there's a Pop-Tarts billboard, there's a Copper Tone one with the flames that they put in all the trailers. It's called the official suntan lotion of the team, meaning that they're probably actually getting paid by sponsors. The Pan Am Tower Mole Man attack is actually a bit of a double Easter egg. First, it's a more direct callback to Mole Man in the comics, played by Paul Walter Hauser, who winds up helping them later in the movie.
I
But also
expected
in
to
real
have-
life, the
have
Pan
the
Am building
moles,
was
like in the
bought by
series.
MetLife, and it's where the Avengers Tower is in the MCU. Like they just turned the MetLife building into the Avengers Tower. So it's literally like Mole Man is stealing the alternate universe version of the Avengers Tower here.
Mm.
They fight the Mad Thinker. The robot that's flying by them when they go past is based on Herbie's original design in the 1970s Fantastic Four
Herbie
TV
looked
show.
pregnant in
The
that
little
one.
girl here that Johnny Storm rescues is Matt Shackman's daughter in real life. They fight Red Ghost and his super apes. John Malkovich was supposed to play him in the movie, but his scenes
Yeah, I
got
forgot
deleted.
about
Not
that.
the apes, though. In the comics, they got their powers from the same cosmic rays that gave the Fantastic Four their powers. During his whole Bill Nye the Science Guy TV show that he broadcasts where he teaches kids science, he actually talks about parallel dimensions. This is also to foreshadow them jumping across universes to come to the MCU during Avengers
I
Doomsday,
thought we were
and
gonna
of
get
course,
that in the
the
movie.
Thunderbolts post-credit scene and everything that's happening with Secret Wars. They start the Future Foundation, which is also from the Jonathan Hickman Fantastic Four run, and Sue Storm brokers peace with Mole Man and Subterranea to set the twist later in the movie when they send everybody to hide in Subterranea from Galactus. In the context of the MCU, the Future Foundation operates more like a United Nations of countries around the world being
They're
represented.
basically
In the
in
comics,
charge.
it's just a scientific organization that Reed Richards starts with a much more selective membership. But Doctor Doom does eventually become part of the Future Foundation. In the movie,
He
they
was
only
yeah,
show
he was already
Latveria
in.
has a seat on the Future Foundation. Doctor Doom was invited to join, but nobody is sitting there. But Latveria is still represented. I think the reference
You
here
wanna
is
show
to
what?
Doctor Doom in this universe not wanting to openly support the team at this time. This kind of gets into the post-credit scene. I think that we're meant to infer that Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom actually comes from their universe. He's around while all this Galactus stuff is happening, and the Fantastic Four have faced him in battle before. Matt Jackman said that they didn't want to use the character as a big character in the movie just because
You
they wouldn't have
can't.
been able to do him justice. They were doing so much with Galactus and Silver Surfer and Franklin Richards already. There's just too much
You
stuff
gotta
going
give them a
on.
little bit
Also because Marvel wanted to
to
keep
tease
him
it.
for Avengers Doomsday. Like, please don't use the character before we're ready to show him off in Avengers Doomsday because we're doing really different stuff with him. Which is why you don't really see him until the post-credit scene. Then there's a really huge Easter egg where the logo, all the different groups that are thanking the Fantastic Four zoom out. In one of the bubbles, there's actually the original cast of that 1994 Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie. They also went to the premiere, as did Young Grufford, the
Nice.
previous version of Reed Richards from the Chris Evans Fantastic Four movies. It was actually really cool to see them all there. Like, they seemed like they were really jazzed up to be part of all this. When they go back to
I
the
was
Baxter building, notice the elevator buttons panel. The lower levels just have symbols instead of basement themed
That's a
numbers.
lab,
Kind
isn't
of
it?
wonder what's in those basements. It's a little bit like Rick and Morty, where like his sub basements just keep going and going and going. Like you just wonder what's on each level. They introduce Herbie the Robot, which is a huge deep cut. He didn't originally come from the comics. He actually debuted on the 1970s Fantastic Four TV show as a replacement for Human Torch because they didn't have the rights to use Human Torch at that time. So Herbie got written into the comics after that. There was also a really brief deleted scene featuring
Is that
Herbie in the
Herbie,
Chris
bro?
Evans Fantastic Four movie. This movie treats him like a member of the family, like he has a genuine personality and some level of sentience, but Reed Richards kind of swaps out his programming using different tapes. So it's very 1960s vibe on the programming too. Very cool looking. Reed Richards has a bunch of other robots that you see during the movie working on their Excelsior spaceship, but I think that Herbie is meant to be the only model of his kind. Real life Easter egg here too, Ben Grimm is shown to
The
be a
cooking.
really good cook. Eben Moss
Cooking up
Bacharach,
that
who plays the character,
into
is also on the Bear TV show, which is all about trying to run a restaurant. It's a great show too if you haven't seen it. On the Lucky Charms box that Johnny is eating cereal from, notice they use the real-life 1960s version of their logo, and on the back is a real-life comic book panel of Johnny Storm that Jack Kirby drew. Because they're celebrities in this universe, their likeness is on everything. They do the whole
Lucky
Sunday
Charms
dinner
got
bit as they
paid.
did as part of the promotion for the movie, like Sunday dinner, 7 p.m. on the dot, no matter what. During that, they were giving tours of the Baxter Building to news crews, which were meant to be based on Jacqueline Kennedy's tours of the White House that she gave in the 1960s. In real life, Marvel actually posted this meme every Sunday at 7 p.m. until the movie came out.
That's
There's a
funny.
little wordplay about them telling the others that she's pregnant with Franklin Richards. They really want them to feel like a genuine family in the movie. Vin Diesel would be proud. This would be
Right.
important for the Avengers Doomsday, Doctor Doom yoinking Franklin Richards, and their whole motivation for wanting to go after him. They reveal the news to the world and it becomes a trending news topic because they are celebrities, like everyone's obsessed with the celebrity lives. They all start wondering though, will the baby have powers like them? And the answer
They
is of
weren't worried
course,
about
yes,
that.
way, way
They wanted
more
to get
power.
rid of that
There's
baby
that funny montage
so
of
they
them
could
baby
live.
proofing the Baxter building, much to the chagrin of Ben Grimm and Johnny Storm. They mention Yancey Street, saying Yancey Street bookies are laying odds on the baby being a girl or a boy. This is meant to be a sly reference to Valeria Richards also. There are a lot of questions about when we're going to see her in the MCU. Maybe in the next couple of years, we will see about that. Way, way twistier than Franklin Richards, involves a lot of time travel, involves Doctor Doom in a really big way. Now that he's come into the equation in the post-credit scene, maybe we'll see some Valeria Richards after Secret Wars.
Hopefully. I'll bring her in.
When they start showing all the different magazines about the baby, and they say girl powers or boy powers, Valeria Richards does have powers, but not on the level of Franklin Richards. And because a lot of these scenes just show the interior of the Baxter and all their different clothes, there were a lot of people that were asking questions about Johnny Storm and why he doesn't burn his clothes off every single time he uses his abilities. Stan Lee's answer for that back in the day, like he actually came up with this idea of unstable molecules. All their clothes and their uniforms are now made of unstable molecules, which is why they can do all the things that they do without them breaking their clothes or ripping their clothes apart. Reed Richards starts getting more deep space transmissions. They get 23 total, and they're all from the different worlds that Galactus has recently consumed. One of them being from Zen-La, the homeworld of Shalla-Bal, Silver Surfer, and also Norrin Radd in the comics. We'll talk about that in a second too, because that serves as the big twist in the movie where Johnny Storm uses that to help turn Silver Surfer against Galactus. There are a couple of flashbacks to Zen-La, but they don't show Norrin Radd, Silver Surfer at all. They set up the twist with the new versions of their spacesuits, which are meant to work with their abilities now, and the teleportation test is foreshadowing the portals that they create later to take Galactus to another part of the universe. Also meant to foreshadow Reed Richards learning how to travel across dimensions. There are a lot of complaints that there wasn't enough Ben Grimm in the movie, but you actually see him on Yancey Street during this part of the movie. There's the first joke of him saying it's clobbering time. His cap he's wearing is a Boston Red Sox cap, and he winds up meeting Natasha Lyonne's Rachel Rosman. I think she's either meant to be a teacher or one of the rabbis at the synagogue. My assumption, just based on the romantic foreshadowing here, is that she's meant to take the place of Alicia Masters in the comics, who eventually did get married to Ben Grimm. You also notice that they're standing next to a building that says Stanley's Service Center, which I think is a Stan Lee reference. Reed Richards later tells them that he's been tracking 47 different criminal organizations with a plan to stop them all before Franklin Richards is born, baby-proofing the world. He mentions the Puppet Master, the Wizard, Diablo. These are all classic Fantastic Four villains that you see in the cartoon at the end of the post-credit scene. Johnny tries to get Ben to say, "It's clobbering time. What time is it? What time is it? Say the thing." Then their alert watches are triggered by the arrival of Silver Surfer, who has come to planet Earth because they have sensed Franklin Richards is about to be born. During this scene, I've already explained the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby Timely Comics reference, but like I said, all the artwork in here is genuine Jack Kirby artwork, and a lot of it depicts those original Fantastic Four comics, but in universe, the way they explain it is that they did this art after the Fantastic Four's adventures in this universe. So it'd be like if the Avengers were real, and then a comic book company just came along and said, "Why don't we make comics based on your adventures?" Probably one of the biggest Easter eggs here too is also the Watcher Uatu showing up on one of their comic book panels. He was part of that original Coming of Galactus story, but we don't actually see him in any regular part of the movie, so he could be a deleted scene. We will see. We've already seen the live-action Watchers in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
I herald Galactus.
Silver Surfer heralds the coming of Galactus. Love the way this speech went down in the actual movie. When Johnny Storm chases her to orbit, the reason why his flames cut out is because there's no oxygen in space and he needs it. Reed Richards' solution for this later in the movie when they go to visit Galactus is to build it into his spacesuit like a special oxygen tank. She speaks to him in her language. She says that it's a prayer meant to basically spend what time he has with the ones that he loves, essentially, and that's in her language. Like it's one of the sayings on her homeworld, Zen-La. When they start preparing the shuttle to actually take off to see Galactus, you actually notice that he switches Herbie's programming with a different type of tape for space. Really cool 1960s level tape based technology. Marvel, please start selling some of this stuff
Harold
as
is
merch.
coming.
Reed Richards notes that this is going to be the first time a pregnant woman has ever gone into space. Normally would seem kind of risky, like you might not want to actually take that risk, but she does have superpowers, so she'd probably be okay. In Galactus, Silver Surfer attacks notwithstanding, she actually does pretty decent. When they reach orbit, they use a special deep space
Yeah, she
engine
was
Reed
going
Richards
through
created
contraction.
intended to help them travel faster than light. Like, notice they say faster than light travel using wormholes, which is similar to the way the Bifrost that Thor uses tunnels across space. This is also going to be
Space
similar
and
to
time.
how they wind up traveling across dimensions, like an upgraded version of this. Ben Grimm mentioning space dragons is probably a reference to the McLuhans, like Fing Fang Foom. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created them in the Strange Tales comics just a couple months before they created the actual Fantastic Four comics. Maybe it's also a reference to the Great Protector Dragon in the Shang-Chi movie too, like those big dragons. Reed tells Ben that if Galactus just winds up being a big guy in a ship, you can punch him out, which he
Yeah,
does,
you would
and
have wished
winds
that.
up being able to punch him later in the movie. They arrive
He
at
had
the
to do a
planet just as
cannonball
Galactus
though.
is in the middle of consuming it, and the thing that bores through the actual planet is his world ship, Ta 2 from the comics, which converts the mass of the planet into energy that he can consume. It's a little bit like Unicron in Transformers. In fact, Unicron is based on Galactus in the comics. Notice that you see Galactus scanning them through his ship when he clocks Franklin Richards as a fetus. And notice the interior design of Galactus' ship when they go onto it is similar to the Celestials' technology, even though Galactus himself is not a Celestial. In the comics, the actual
Probably gonna
design of
be
his
hard to
world ship
break
Ta
too.
2 was meant to be an homage to his original homeworld of Ta. When he says billions of years ago, I was little like you, he used to be the scientist Galen of Ta, a humanoid scientist that looked a lot like them. He explains that he wants Franklin Richards, now he's destined to replace him and become the new Galactus eventually. I've already talked about this in my previous videos. Basically, the idea is that Franklin Richards eventually merges with Galactus to survive the death of the universe. I already explained the scene here with Galactus using his power and his eyes glowing purple, kind of like the Power Stone, and making the same noise as the Infinity Gauntlet when Thanos was using it, just seemingly connected to the same type of power that the Infinity Stones have. Galactus then induces labor, causing Franklin Richards to be born when he uses his power on her. You also notice Silver Surfer
Born in
surfs
space
the
was
lava
crazy.
flows with the surfboard because she is a surfer when they try to escape. When Johnny Storm also laments having to attack Silver Surfer because he finally met someone interesting, he's had a long history of girlfriends and love interests in the comics that have gone very badly, like Crystal from the Inhumans, Frankie Ray, who herself also became another Herald of Galactus. So he just has a thing for the Heralds of Galactus. There are many more tragic girlfriends that he's had after that. They use the black hole to try and get rid of Silver Surfer, but end up having to use the actual
Didn't even
black
work.
hole to trap her for a little while. It's not even powerful enough to destroy her because she has the power cosmic, just like Galactus and just like Franklin Richards. This is probably one of the best action scenes in the movie though, like really cool moment here where Sue Storm also turns the entire shuttle invisible briefly. And you notice how her powers go
That
on the
was the
fritz
only way
when
to
she's
get out
in
of it.
actual labor, like while she's busy pushing Franklin Richards out. She names him Franklin Benjamin Richards after her father, Franklin Storm, and Benjamin is after Ben Grimm. They do that press conference explaining that they couldn't stop Galactus and they weren't willing to give up their child Franklin in order to stop him from
I
consuming
don't
the
even know
Earth,
why you
to
told
basically
them
set up a
about the
scenario in the
child.
movie where the world now
You just
hates
said
the
he didn't want to
Fantastic Four and are
negotiate.
turning on them because they've chosen their family over the rest of the world. Kind of like Marvel's version of a Fast and Furious movie.
I don't have friends. I got
There's a scene of Silver Surfer learning from Galactus that he wants Franklin to absorb his hunger, basically replacing him as the hunger so that he won't be forced to feed on planets anymore because he considers it a curse. When she gets sad about that, it's also meant to be a reference to later in the movie with the flashbacks and the little girl. I think the idea is that the little girl in the flashbacks on Zenla, her homeworld,
Her
was
daughter.
her daughter. So she feels a special
Most
connection
likely.
to Sue Storm and the newly born Franklin Richards. Like, why you gotta hurt the tiny little baby? He's just a little baby. But Galactus is not so forgiving of his heralds. When Reed says the
Like a few
samples that
days
Herbie
old,
took of
bruh.
Galactus's
He was
ship
he wanted
show
to
that he
take them.
predates their universe, that's just more reference to his origin that he does predate the universe like the Infinity Stones. There's a couple references to Franklin's power too. The whole reason why Franklin doesn't show up on any scans in any weird way, like he's not getting any special energy from him, is because, as Galactus says, he hides his true nature from you. So Franklin Richards, Grogu style, is suppressing his power.
I
When
don't
the
think
world
he's
is
trying to
railing
do it,
against
but
them, notice
it's
that they
just
have a
happening.
WHIH news organization on TV. That's actually appeared all over the Marvel movies since the first Iron Man film. Sue Storm's speech about moving heaven and earth gives Reed the final idea he
That's
needs to
literally
try
what
and
she did.
literally portal the
They
earth
did.
to another part of space to hide it from Galactus for an extremely long amount of time, like millions of years. There's another Doctor Doom Latveria reference when they're doing the press conference at the Future Foundation when she starts asking all the different nations for their
going
help in their
on,
resources.
buddy?
You just see the empty chair in the Latverian flag and that's it. So it seems like Doctor Doom did not want to help them out during this. Maybe that's what Franklin Richards was talking to him about during the post-credit scene, like, dude, where were you? Why didn't you help us out a couple years ago? Then they finally explain Ben Grimm's beard in all the trailers. It's all part of the energy curfew, and he was always constantly growing
Bro,
rock
the
facial
screen
features,
froze.
kind of like his version of hair, but was just constantly shaving it with the energy device that Reed Richards built for him. Notice when Galactus
Alright,
enters the
there we
solar
go.
system, he passes by the Future Foundation's flag on the moon. I think that John Malkovich Red Ghost scenes were supposed to take place on the moon, so like maybe he would have
Dropping
been here
frames
watching
like
Galactus's world
crazy.
ship pass over. Silver
Yeah,
Surfer
alright, it's
destroys
almost
their
over.
devices, preventing them from teleporting the planet, and then Johnny Storm uses the transmissions from Zen-La to get her to stop, to pause for a
Johnny
beat.
clutched
Then they
up
call
with
out
this
her name,
though.
Shala Bal, from the
Made her
comics.
turn good.
Then he learns on her home world, she actually sacrificed herself to get Galactus to spare her world, which is basically Norrin Radd's origin story. She eventually became a Herald of Galactus after Norrin Radd rebelled against Galactus, and he selected another one. In the comics, Shala Bal was Norrin Radd's love interest. You actually see her appear on that
Shala Bal,
Silver
he was
Surfer
obsessed
animated
with
show
her.
during the 90s. There are a couple of flashbacks. You actually see her getting the power cosmic, all Norrin Radd origin story stuff. Like I said, I think the little girl is meant to be her child in context. Like
Maybe
she left
Norrin
her
Radd
child
too.
behind, sacrificing herself so that they would live.
My service spares my world.
Reed Richards' plan B is to then portal Galactus away without the use
That was
of
the
his
only
ship,
way you
stranding
could
him on
defeat
the
him.
far side of the universe. There are a lot of people that ask, what happened to Galactus' ship at the end of the movie? What happens to
Like I said, I
Galactus if
think
he
Doom
doesn't
might
have his
take
ship?
it, bro.
Part of the idea is that he was using his world ship to basically turn planets into energy that he could consume. He can still consume planets without the ship. It just takes him way, way longer. He can also survive in the vacuum of space just fine. It's just that he can't move nearly as fast, but he can build another ship. Like he doesn't have the
Yeah,
one
have
ship
to
and that's
quick.
it. Like he can just eventually build another one. It'll just take him a very, very long time. All he needs to do is just find a couple planets in the distant part of the universe with celestial cores inside them, consume those, and he will be juiced up big time. Juiced up and ready for revenge. But I do think that his world
think
ship
we'll see
is
him
in Earth's
again
orbit at the end of the movie, like it's just sitting there for Reed Richards to
soon.
experiment on and examine. They bring in Paul Walter Hauser's Mole Man to get help evacuating everyone to Subterranea. There are a couple of funny moments about their past rivalry with Reed Richards just like really, really hating his guts. Ben goes to the synagogue to talk to Rachel Rosman because she also goes there and he's Jewish in the comics too. If it wasn't clear, Ben Grimm is a Jewish character. When Galactus lands
I
on the
even know that.
planet, the reason why he bends down to smell the trees and the grass is because he hasn't
finally
smelled
touched
anything like
grass,
that
bruh.
in billions of years. So he's just enjoying it, remembering what his life used to be like before he became Galactus. Like, oh, this isn't something that I've actually experienced in billions of years. Then throws Ben Grimm into space,
Yeah, that was
pulls
crazy.
Reed Richards like a piece of taffy. That's actually happened to him multiple times in the comics. And they finally pay off the It's Clobberin' Time bit with Ben Grimm and Johnny Storm doing their version of a fastball special. After he gets his hands on Franklin, Sue Storm then pushes Galactus into the portal with her powers, and then eventually
Yeah,
winds up
she went
succumbing to her
all out.
injuries and dies. We'll get to that in a second too, because Franklin Richards for the assist
That
with the power
mom strength,
cosmic.
bro. Don't mess
Galactus
with
is then
someone's
able
baby.
to work his way back through the portal until Silver Surfer finally rebels against him, pushing him back through, also sacrificing herself in order to trap him on the other side of the universe. Both of them are still alive and able to come back in future stories, so we will see what they do with them when we get to Avengers Doomsday. And because his world ship Ta-2 is just sitting in Earth's orbit now, I think that Reed Richards probably
Nah,
spent the
someone
next
had
4
to
years for that post-credit scene
mess
time
with it.
jump, just examining it, experimenting on it. He actually referenced this earlier in the movie, like, I need more time to actually experiment on it. The actual ship itself is as big as an actual planet, if not bigger, so it would take them forever to examine the whole
That's
thing.
what I'm saying, bro.
Maybe
That could be
they'll wind up
Doom's.
using it in some way during Avengers Doomsday or Secret Wars. That would actually be pretty cool. Like, hey, I got this giant Galactus-sized spaceship out here. Why don't we use this to get around? Maybe Doctor Doom would also try to hijack something like that too. Franklin Richards then uses the power cosmic to bring Sue Storm back to life, which is also why it's possible that in the post-credit scene, he uses the same power cosmic to heal Doctor Doom's
Yeah, that's what I
scarred
was
face.
thinking he was
That could
doing
be why
too.
he's touching his face without his mask on. Like Doctor Doom takes his mask off, and Franklin Richards is literally giving him face pats. You also notice Sue Storm's eyes glow the same color of Galactus's purple eyes with the stars in them when he uses his power on her. So this is meant to show you how powerful Franklin Richards is even as a tiny baby here. His powers will grow as he gets older.
My power is limitless.
Sue Storm, the new herald of Franklin Richards, rise, to me, my Sue Storm. Then the movie with that funny bit about the Ted Gilbert show bailing because they have another villain to fight, they give Franklin a Fantastic Four baby onesie with a 5 on it because they
said.
call it the Fantastic Five now, consider him a member of the team, but they joke about it being way too early for that kind of stuff because in the comics, both Franklin and Valeria wear their own Fantastic Four uniforms and fight with the team on adventures. When she says who knows where Franklin's powers will take him, that's more Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars foreshadowing, also to the post-credit scene, like where's he going to be going with Doctor Doom right after this? Maybe to a completely different
Better
dimension.
not turn them evil.
There's the funny scene of them not being
Yeah,
able
go
to figure
crazy.
out how to work the baby seat in the Fantastic Car, despite the fact that they're super smart, like smartest man alive cannot figure out the baby seat. I've already done a much longer video about the actual post-credit scenes. There are 2 of them, but the whole idea is the book that Franklin Richards is reading with Sue Storm is called The Hungry Caterpillar, which is a reference to the Hunger Galactus, also the butterflies that he talks about, the butterfly effect, in how things are going to be set off during Avengers Doomsday because of what happens here. Herbie with the Charles Darwin Origin of the Species book that Franklin likes is also an X-Men Mutants reference because it's the next stage in evolution. Charles Darwin studied evolution. There's a lot that we can actually parse from this Doctor Doom scene. You can't really hear what he's saying or if he's saying anything, but it does
he's
kind
not
of look
saying
like Franklin
anything.
Richards might be healing his face, and that's why he took his mask off in the first place.
Yeah.
It's totally possible also that instead of stealing Franklin and trying to use his power to do something terrible, they actually try to pitch it as if Franklin wants to help Doctor Doom and he's actually trying to save the multiverse like he was during
Maybe.
Jonathan Hickman's Time Runs Out in Secret Wars, but winds up becoming a more tragic villain during that. Also, during that
Doom is gonna
storyline,
trick
he
him.
winds up getting his face healed, which might be another reference to what Franklin is doing here. This might be Marvel's excuse so that they can have Robert Downey Jr., Doctor Doom, on screen without having a super messed up face. Like, we want to have him on screen, we want him to be able to take his mask off and look like Robert Downey Jr., but we don't want him to have to sit through like 10 hours of makeup every single day. Why don't we just have Franklin heal his face and we don't have to worry about it? Kind of like that joke of
Simple.
how Robert Downey Jr. early on in the Iron Man movies stopped wanting to have to sit through all the different prosthetics, so they started to do all the Iron Man armors with CG so that he doesn't have to walk around with all that stuff on set every single day. I already talked about the Fantastic Four cartoon post-credit scene. All these villains that they fight during this are references to the classic 1960s TV show and a lot of the villains that they talked about fighting earlier in the movie. There's still a lot to unpack from this, a lot of Galactus videos, like what is Franklin Richards going to be doing to help Doctor Doom during Avengers Doomsday, or is he gaslighting Franklin? Like, is he using Franklin somehow? It doesn't seem like he'd be able to do that. It seems like Franklin is totally aware of what's going on during this scene, and he's not afraid
I
of
think
Doctor Doom.
Doom's not
Would
gonna
not be surprised, though, if
really
Franklin
bad
Richards is
until
this
later
old
on.
through all of Avengers Doomsday.
Like
My
he's
assumption is the
gonna, or
idea
he's
is they
gonna
want to
trick him.
slowly age him up to like teenager level by the time we start getting the new
Yeah,
X-Men movies after Secret Wars. So like he'll slowly, very slowly get older the next several years.
yeah.
The really big reminder is
And
that
they're in the
Secret Wars will
60s,
be the
so
soft reset
by
that Kevin
then
Feige called it, like a soft
probably
resetting
old
of
enough.
singular timelines, which is basically code word for reboot. Would not be surprised if they use that as an excuse to age Franklin up to teenager. For those of you asking, I do believe that Galactus will show up somewhere during
Yeah, I
Secret
do
Wars in a
think so
version of
too.
Silver Surfer. I don't know about Norrin Rad. They might save Norrin Rad till after Secret Wars. Just because there's so much stuff going on during the movie, if there's any Easter eggs or references that you
I don't
spotted
know.
that
I
I
don't
didn't
think they
talk about
should.
in this video or
Just
my
keep it on
previous videos,
Doom.
write them below in the comments and I'll try to add them to my future videos this weekend. There's a lot of stuff coming up. Still got to see the movie a couple more times to try and catch everything.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly just surprised that my voice didn't completely give out while I was making this video because it's so long and
Yeah,
I'm
that
so
was it. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.